migrant guilty of murdering an asylum hotel worker. He stabbed her with a screwdriver and then danced as she lay dying. This is the woman who died, Rhiannon Skye White, 20.
Breaking. A mother, a screwdriver, 23 strikes. Rhiannon Skye White, 27 years old, worked at a migrant hotel in Bexley. She had a 5-year-old daughter waiting at home. On November the 20th, 2022, she never made it back. At 11:10 p.m, security cameras captured her final moments at the train station. Deng Chol Majek followed her from the hotel. What happened next was captured in witness testimony that shocked the courtroom. He stabbed her 23 times with a screwdriver. Then, according to multiple witnesses, he danced. Security footage later showed him celebrating in his hotel room, moving to music while Rhiannon lay dying on cold concrete. If this story shocks you, hit subscribe, because what comes next will make you question everything about how Britain's justice system actually works. The trial became a legal nightmare that exposed cracks in the entire system. Majek claimed he was 19, technically a minor under UK law. No passport, no documents, no biometric data, no way to verify his claim. The court couldn't definitively prove his age, and that single fact changed everything about how he'd be sentenced, where he'd be housed, and how the media could report his case. Meanwhile, Rhiannon's family sat in that courtroom day after day, watching the man who killed their daughter exploit the very system she died serving. Within 2 hours of the verdict announcement, thousands flooded Parliament Square. They weren't just mourning Rhiannon, they were confronting a pattern that official data now confirms. Home Office statistics show over 50,000 knife attacks recorded in England and Wales last year alone. Do the math. That's one stabbing every 10 minutes. While you've been watching this video, statistically, another knife crime has already occurred somewhere in Britain. Nigel Farage released a statement that went viral within hours, reaching over 2 million views by midnight. "We're not talking about isolated incidents anymore," he said. "We're talking about an epidemic that the government refuses to acknowledge." The opposition pointed to a disturbing trend buried in immigration tribunal data. When migrants claim to be minors and their age is formally challenged through medical assessment, 2/3 are later proven to be adults. Not 1/3, not half. 2 out of every 3. These are grown men accessing youth services, receiving softer judicial treatment, and in some cases being placed in facilities with actual children. The system isn't just broken, it's being actively gamed. Then Donald Trump weighed in. His post on X hit 8.3 million views in under 2 hours. "Look at London," he wrote. "Terrible mayor. It's been so changed. They want Sharia law now. You can't do that." Whether you agree with his politics or not, when a sitting US president comments on your domestic crisis with that level of reach, it's no longer just a domestic crisis. It's an international embarrassment. But here's where the numbers become impossible to ignore. Britain is currently spending £8 million per day housing asylum seekers in hotels. Let that sink in. That's £2.9 billion annually from taxpayer funds. Meanwhile, the same government just cancelled winter fuel payments for 10 million pensioners. That's up to £300 per household, stripped away during the worst cost of living crisis in a generation. Elderly British citizens who've paid taxes for decades now face a choice between heating and eating, while new arrivals receive accommodation, 3 meals daily, and warmth at public expense. Prime Minister Keir Starmer defended the cuts in a press conference, citing a £22 billion budget deficit inherited from the previous Conservative government. "We're making tough decisions," he said, "decisions that are necessary to stabilise the economy." But critics immediately fired back with the obvious question: tough for whom? The elderly who built this country, or the system administrators managing the optics? And the crisis deepens when you look at what's happening inside Britain's prisons. They're operating at 99% capacity, not 90%, not 95%, 99%. There's literally no room left. So to solve the overcrowding problem, the government activated the controversial SDS-40 scheme, releasing 40,000 inmates early. Violent offenders, drug dealers, some with assault convictions, walking free not because they've been rehabilitated, but because there's simply no space left. And here's the part that makes people's blood boil. While British criminals walk out the front door to make space, up to 1,000 undocumented migrants cross the English Channel every single day. The border force is overwhelmed, the processing centres are overflowing, the hotels are full, so new arrivals are being housed in former military barracks, student accommodations, and in some cases, luxury hotels that cost taxpayers more per night than most British families spend on rent. The system has become a literal revolving door. British criminals exit, Unknown nationals enter, and the public is left asking the most basic question a government should be able to answer. Who are you actually protecting? Here's the part that should genuinely terrify you. Under current UK law, pepper spray is classified the same as a prohibited firearm. Read that again. Under Section 5 of the Firearms Act, possession of pepper spray carries the same legal penalties as carrying a machine gun. We're talking potential years in prison for carrying a canister of CS gas that in most countries is considered a basic self-defense tool. Women facing attackers in dark streets have exactly 3 legal options: run, scream, or call police and hope they arrive in time. That's it, no pepper spray, no taser, no defensive tools of any kind. Meanwhile, in 2024, nearly 76% of burglaries in the UK went unsolved. Police don't arrive in time because they can't. They're understaffed and overwhelmed. Yet if you're caught with a defensive spray, conviction rates approach 100%. Think about that. The state will prosecute you faster for carrying pepper spray than they'll solve your home invasion. The opposition is now demanding what they call common sense reform. Allow non-lethal defense tools. Allow pepper spray at minimum. The comparison to America's Second Amendment is deliberate and pointed. In the United States, self-defense is a constitutional right. In Britain, fighting back can land you in court longer than your attacker serves time. There are documented cases of homeowners being prosecuted for injuring burglars who broke into their homes. The legal standard is reasonable force, but case law has made that definition so impossibly narrow that victims are terrified to defend themselves. Nigel Farage put it bluntly during a television interview that's now been viewed over 5 million times. If the state can't protect you within seconds, you must have the tools to survive those seconds. The social contract is broken when law-abiding citizens are criminalised for wanting to live, and the data backs up his fury. Violent crime has risen 18% in some London boroughs over the past 2 years. Sexual assault reports topped 210,000 last year across the UK. Knife crime continues its relentless upward climb, despite millions spent on intervention programmes. Yet government focus remains largely on policing offensive speech online and banning so-called zombie knives, theatrical measures that critics say avoid addressing root causes. Back at Parliament Square, the protests escalated into chaos. 22 shop windows smashed. 124 arrests by midnight. 58 people hospitalised. Police deployed dog units. Protesters threw fireworks and smoke bombs. 3 police vans were abandoned and later vandalised. Media outlets quickly labelled the crowds far-right extremists and urged people to stay home. European leaders, watching from Brussels, applauded Starmer's tolerance and commitment to openness. But from London to Belfast, Cardiff to Edinburgh, the message from the streets was unified and clear. The legislation itself must be completely overhauled. Then the final data bomb dropped, and it's perhaps the most damning evidence of systematic failure. When age verification is actually conducted using bone density scans, dental analysis, and wrist X-rays, the results are staggering. In cases where authorities formally challenge an asylum seeker's claimed age, adults posing as children are exposed at rates exceeding 60%. These aren't statistical outliers. This is systematic fraud on an industrial scale. And every single fraudulent claim puts real vulnerable children at risk in mixed accommodation facilities and foster care systems. Starmer responded by promising new verification methods are in development, but they require legislative approval and time to implement properly. Time Rhiannon Sky White didn't have. Time her 5-year-old daughter will never get back. So where does that leave Britain? A mother is dead. A killer exploited legal ambiguity. Prisons are full, so convicted criminals walk free. Borders are porous, so new arrivals flood in daily by the thousands. Citizens are disarmed by law while violent crime surges. The elderly freeze while newcomers are housed in comfort. And anyone who dares question this arrangement publicly is immediately labelled an extremist. This isn't a policy debate anymore. It's a crisis of state legitimacy. Starmer's approval rating dropped 2.5 percentage points in just 7 hours following the protests, one of the fastest single-day declines in modern British political history. His administration argues they're addressing long-term structural issues that previous governments ignored. But the public doesn't see long-term strategy. They see short-term betrayal. When your government visibly prioritises the comfort and protection of non-citizens over the safety of tax-paying citizens who built the country, trust doesn't just erode, it collapses entirely. The verdict in Rhiannon's specific case may still be pending final appeal, but the verdict on the system itself is already in. The innocent are serving the sentence. The guilty are gaming the system, And the government is managing decline instead of enforcing order. If you believe this story needs to reach more people, share it now. If you think the data speaks for itself, comment below with one word: enough. And if you want to follow how this story develops, because it's far from over, make sure you're subscribed. Britain stands at a crossroads. The question isn't whether change is coming. The question is whether it arrives through democratic reform or through something far more dangerous. And right now, judging by the scenes at Parliament Square, the streets are voting.